There we go. All right. You see that little guy up in the top right corner? That's kind of the Linux mascot. His name is Tux. Researching. Apparently there's a big snafu with it. It doesn't matter. That's him right there. So you'll see him branded with the Android package. Branded with everything. And yeah, we're being brought to you by that. Oops. By us. So what are you here for? You want to learn something about Linux, right? I want to teach you something. I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. There's too much to know. I know overviews. I know how to use some tools. I know this stuff. My idea is that I want you guys to go out from here and say, you know, I saw him using Eclipse through Linux. Let me try that out. Let me see what I can do with that. I saw him using Make. Let me try that out. Okay, there's all kinds of tools out there. And I get into that a little bit more. Yeah, broaden your horizons, cool. And Linux, if you use Make, if you use some of these tools, they're all licensed with GNU, GPL version, whatever. So it's all free to you, free to distribute. You can make money off of it if you want to. With the student copies that we're given on campus for like Visual Studio and stuff, you can't make money off that. Well, can't technically, because we are licensed through the school, so technically the school has rights to it. They would never take your rights to it, but they do technically have it. Yeah, and once again, you're not going to learn anything here if you don't go outside this room and try it out. I'm going to show you all these things, and there's tons of reference material in here. You'll know pretty much anything that you want to know leaving here if you look it up. Here's my question. Who's only used Windows? There's 3, 4, a few of you. I'm guessing the other people that haven't used Linux have used Mac. Is that correct? This close enough. So as you can see on my little chart here, believe it or not, this is a little out of date, but Windows XP is still winning. They just recently, within the last month, lost out to Windows 7. It's a slim margin now. So because businesses are moving to Windows 7. But if you look at that, that's 75% of the market share. You got Vista even there with another chunk of it. And then you got your little OS X, and then your iOS, and your Android, which Android is a Linux variant, so you can kind of group those together. And there's 2% of the market share. Why is that? Anyone heard of Linux? Why don't you use it?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What percentage of that market share is, grandma's computers?
I couldn't tell you. Believe it or not, though, the majority of this is businesses, schools, businesses, places that do large deployments of these. So you look at how many computers do we have on campus? What were they running 2 years ago? You would know. What were they running 2 or 3 years ago, however long it was? They were on XP, weren't they?
Yeah.
Then we skipped Vista, went straight to Windows 7.
Yeah.
That was not too long ago. So that's because it's cheaper to do that in cycles. So yeah, there's your answer. Which Linux is right for me? Pick one. So here's your endless loop if you want to get into that. I'm unsure. I want to try Linux. Okay, but I would say on this side, this is all the server variants over here. You can see the server there, and your experience level, blah, blah, blah. At work, we use Solaris. I don't know where I'm sorry, we use Red Hat. My bad. I read Solaris, but we use Red Hat. But here you can see OS X or Windows. That's where I would start. And that's why I recommend it for everybody to start with Ubuntu. Because it's easy. It's really easy to use. But any of these up here, even down here, these aren't too bad. There's Ubuntu again. Ubuntu Studio. There's tons of different versions. That's what I'm getting at here. You can look back at this and choose one later. Doesn't matter. Or just use Ubuntu, or just stay on Windows. Doesn't matter.
I actually don't like the visual GUI of it. A lot of them, like the Ubuntu especially, you can just download a new GUI over it.
There's different, I go into customizability later. There's different desktop environments you can have. There's different, you can have just command line. Why? I don't know. So here's your Unix. If you don't know, Unix came about before Linux. Unix was started in, ooh, you can't read that. It was started in Bell Labs, AT&T. The reason why you don't see Unix as popular as Windows, because AT&T got into a crisis. They couldn't market it. People said no. The FCC got involved and said, you already own all the telephones, you can't own computers too. So eventually Bell Labs branched off and you have commercial Unix. And right about then is when the GNU project starts up. People said, we want a free version. And that's where Linux comes from, you can see. GNU project, GNU Linux. And, oh yeah, but you can see Berkeley Software Distribution, that's California, Berkeley, they did their own version of it. And they use variants of that. Here's Next Step. If you don't know, Steve Jobs worked for a company called, or he got fired from Apple, worked for a company called Next. They just happen to have this cool operating system that turns out to work nice with OS X. So there's where your OS X comes from. It's a Linux variant. Click on that link for me. So this is a giant chart. I don't recommend you go look at this. I just want to show you how large it is. That's why I didn't actually put it in here. But Linux was started by Linus Torvalds. But Linux kind of looks like Linus. So there's where your name comes from. There's a little more history to that, but cool. And here's the story of the AT&T laboratories. These guys made it. Cool. Give them some credit. And then the GNU project, which is what started the whole Linux thing. That's where we go. Is that ever load? Oh, that's it right there.
Oh.
That PDF. Oh well. The moral of the story is it's a giant chart of different variations, so you can look at that if you want to. I don't think it's that important. So why make the switch to Linux? It's free. That's easy. You don't have to pay anything. There's all these software repositories that are checked. There's live CDs and USBs. You can boot straight from a CD, from a flash drive. These community support, and it's non-commercial. I go into these a little bit. Here's an interesting fact. 90% of today's 500 fastest supercomputers run some variant of Linux, including the 10 fastest. What's that tell you? It's a paperwork spot. So Linux is free. So the way the companies that develop Linux make money is they license it to businesses. That's where they make money. They sell support. They don't actually, they'll give you the operating system, but then they'll say, okay, here, if you have any problems, call us up. And then they monthly fees and make a ton of money off it. It's open source. You can rewrite the Linux kernel if you want to. Why would you? Somebody's already done it. Don't do it. Unless you're Jake. There's software repositories. There's a couple different variants of it. There's Yum, which is the Fedora, SUSE, Mandrive, blah, blah, blah. These things are all, so to get some new software, you do Yum install, whatever you want, whatever that thing is. For the Debian, Ubuntu, and other APT-based systems, apt-get. They're APT-based. Okay. But sudo, that's your, hey, I'm super user. Sudo apt-get, install, whatever, anything that you know is available. And if you don't know what's available, it'll tell you. If you try and use, like, type in Vim, it'll say, hey, you don't have that installed, you want to get it? Okay, this is the command to do it. And you just type it in and it goes. You don't know what Vim is, I'll give you that. So there's these package managers also. These are your GUI variants of this. So you don't always have to use the whole command line thing. And here's the Ubuntu one. I took a ton of screenshots so I can show you it and I don't have to actually run through it again. It's easy. But you can see here, there's VLC, Solarium, all these little programs. But over here, you'll see developer tools. That's what I like. There's tons of stuff over there. If you want anything, look for it. There's a little search bar, type it in, it'll tell you. That's awesome. Let's go on. So here's how I got Eclipse. I just used the Ubuntu Software Center, typed in Eclipse, and it said bam. Now it's downloading straight from there. It'll download to my computer wherever. I think probably user bin. No, actually it'd be root bin probably. Doesn't matter. It's on my computer. I type Eclipse and it pops it up. Cool. So the stuff that I can't find in the Software Center. So one thing I had trouble finding was the where did I type it? The build essentials, which is like Make, GCC, G++, live standard, C++, 6, blah blah blah. All this stuff that you basically need to have. And I just typed in sudo apt-get install build essential. Done. Ask me, hey, I'm going to use this much data. Cool. Yes. There it goes. And then I had it on there. I had to wait a while for it to download and everything, but it was done. No work on my end. Just like your Windows variants. Same concept. So I go back, I guess. I didn't work too hard on polishing these, so no, whatever. But yeah, you can boot straight from a CD or USB drive. You can pop that same one into different, because drivers are built straight into the kernel. So I could give a CD and put it in right there, and I do running Linux. You could do a USB, plug it in there and run Linux. You could do that down the hall, wherever. So one thing I did for my senior project, well, was I made a USB that I could boot up and have all my stuff on it. Turns out there's a lot of stuff that I needed, and it was too big for my 4 gig flash drive. So I gave up. Okay, I go back here a little bit. But you can simultaneously boot these. So you can have Windows, you can have Ubuntu, you can have Ubuntu version 1, you can have everything on there. And just look at them separately, play with them, do whatever. So you can have 15 different operating systems on there. You're only going to use one at a time. So why? Unless you're boot camping, which would be cool. So yeah, you get lots of community support. There's lots of software developers that work in Linux, and mathematicians and other guys that will help you with problems. There's nice forums everywhere. There's no commercial bullcrap that gets in the way that makes it and then delay the releases until November because they make more money off of it, blah, 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 all that good stuff. So when it's done, they send it out. Here's a little bit of you can do any combinations of these software. You're customizable to the nth degree. You can have multiple desktop environments. You can have anything. Naturally more secure. All software in the repo is verified prior to being made available. So it doesn't get to you without being checked out by the people at Canonical, whatever their name is. Customizable. Any distro, any layout, tons of software, multiple desktops, blah, blah, blah. There's literally any combination of things that you can add together.
Right.
Right.
Go.
Can I just point out, if you want to start playing around with Linux, besides the live CDs and that kind of stuff, one of the easiest ways, I think, to start out is, since everybody seems to be on Windows, get VirtualBox, install Linux on VirtualBox. It'll be there, you run it inside of Windows, it doesn't harm anything, and you can just go crazy. It's pretty nice. Pretty
If
pain-free.
you don't know what VirtualBox is, it's software that lets you have a virtual instance of this operating system in your already existing.
I was using VirtualBox and I was trying to install the Mac software on it. Is that possible?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you show me how?
We can help you. I don't know if we can show you how, because you got it?
Oh, no.
Yeah, stuff that I wanted to throw out there. GCC, because I probably use that a few times, but GNU compiler collection, it's a bunch of compilers, so you can compile C++, or I'm sorry, this is C code. There's also G++, which is the C++ version. The Grub bootloader, brand unified bootloader. It's a fancy name for something that loads your operating system. Wine, that's, if you do any gaming, you can game in Linux as well. You use Wine. It's a Windows, or they called it Windows emulator originally, and then they changed it to Windows is not an emulator. Makes your software compatible. Problem solved. Alright, so click on that first link. Here's your references. And like I said, there's tons of stuff out there. These first two are some nice little bash shell references. So, because I know there's tons of commands that you can use. There's rm, ls, cd. It goes on and on and on and on. Is it loading? That was it. Okay. So yeah, here's some of these commands. And just kind of scroll through this real quick. You can see find, grep, pwd is the current directory, make directory, remove directory. There's all these things. So I recommend printing this out when you're working anywhere. Because Linux is a lot of terminal stuff. You'll be using the terminal a lot more than in Windows. Windows you can pretty much get away without doing it. I think you probably could in Linux, but you're going to waste time if you do. You might as well do it in the terminal. Because that's where all the documentation is going. Alright, let's open up the other one. Actually, just skip that second one, because it's mostly the same stuff. Oh, and this one's nice because it has an alphabetical order. You can just Control F on them, and it links to a page that has all of these commands on it. You don't even need to pick that. I don't always. No, that's not it. Yeah, so if you go down here, A through Z, blah, blah, blah. So here's all your C commands. You've got links to them. Click on them. And then here's your command. Here's the options to use with it. If you don't know, a lot of these tools, so the idea of Linux is lots of small tools that do small things that do them very well. So you can combine commands, you can do all these things that will make yourself more efficient over time. The bash terminal works pretty well.
Are any of those distributions specific, or are they universal?
They should be across the board. I haven't actually checked them all out, so I don't know, but I would assume they wouldn't really release it. It's normally at the operating system level for the distribution.
So, the basic commands are distribution specific, but the stuff that you can do with them might differ between distributions.
That's a good point. There's
And if you want to see how it differs, the page that he just showed, that was showing all that info about the command, it was actually a man page, right? So if you actually want to figure out what a command does in a particular distribution, what options are available to it, you know, basically all the stuff that you can do with it, again, type man, space, whatever your command is, will give you that page we just saw, but it will be specific to that implementation. So for example, PS, the process listing under Fedora has different options than process listing under OS X, for example. Okay. And you can do a lot of the same stuff if you have a Mac, for example. You can do a lot of the same stuff in OS X because it is a mock and OpenBSD based system.
I know some of the commands change from distribution to distribution. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Ubuntu sudo and Fedora is like something weird, like,
I haven't messed with it enough to tell you.
Sudo.
You just, here's what you do. Your best resource is Google. I want to do this in Linux. I want to do this in this distribution. You'll get anything you want.
Actually, back up to the previous point as well. If you want to try it, there's an online version. You can browse the operating system from a web page. From a web download.
What's that for?
Just trying
For
it out.
Ubuntu.
Is that their new cloud stuff? Is that what it is?
Project Orion?
So I haven't actually looked into that because I don't like it. It's hovering over me and stuff. But yeah, so cloud-based computing, you can access their servers and use their tools out there without ever having to do anything on the office. So if you want to do that, I believe there's a subscription along with that.
No,
He's
no.
just testing it.
You can try the operating system free in a web page.
Okay.
And so it boots up a copy, you get to do full use of it, and once you close the window, boom, it goes away.
So there's no file storage or anything?
No.
Okay.
but you can play with apps and stuff.
I actually forgot to include this in there, but another thing that I wanted to go into is Sigwin. If you don't know what Sigwin is, it's basically a way to add a Linux kernel, or I'm sorry, a Linux terminal to your computer so that you can use these tools. And there's Sigwin and MinGW, Minimalistic GNU, and Sigwin, I don't know what that stands for. But that would let you, in your Windows environment, use all of the Linux tools. It's all command line based, so if you don't mind doing that, so let's go to next. So I do a lot of Eclipse work at work, so that's what I want to get into, because I like IDEs. They are integrated development environments. It's your Visual Studio, your NetBeans. That's why I put it up there. So you can do all of your coding, and that's what I like. I know Dr. Cirque you like Emacs, correct?
Yeah.
Brian was telling me that you really like that. I'm not a,
Busted.
Damn.
I'm not a big VI, Vim, or Emacs person because I like to see what I'm doing. And I don't like that there's so much extra stuff. But those are other text editing tools. So I prefer gedit. But I know if you master those tools, you can do things way better than other people because you can use them together and you can do aliases through them so that tasks are done really fast for you. So yeah, this reduces your dependency on the command line tools. This site right here will tell you how to set it up. I basically go through all this for you in some quick things. But if you're having any trouble, check back here. That's what I use to set up my environment at home. It's a little different at work because people do it for me. So you select a workspace. Workspace is like a directory for your files where you can do all of this stuff you work out of, and it just encapsulates everything for you. You can do the new project wizard. This was actually wrong because I hadn't installed a plugin. The nice thing about Eclipse is there's tons of plugins that you can add to it to expand its functionality. So here I could do it. I didn't even expand this out, but I could do a new project, but it didn't actually do anything for me. So if you run into this, that's wrong. I like it wrong. So here's what I needed to do. I needed to install these C++ development tools. And I'm a big C++ person, so all this is C++. If you don't know C++, ask me questions. I'll answer them fairly quickly. It's pretty similar to Java, so I wouldn't be worried about any of this stuff. Says you. I know there's people in the world that will tell you you're wrong. So yeah, that's what I needed. So just do that, and make sure you check for updates. Like any software, as soon as you install it, make sure it's up to date. And then this is where I got this menu from. So to get that installed, it takes a little bit. Then you can do your little C++ project, and then it also installs some Java stuff. Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so then I made my project, and I know I showed a picture of it. Oh, I didn't put that in there. Open that back up. So that's on the other computer. I'll show you that real quick. Okay, so here's my little program that I did, and I just did a bunch of stuff so that I can show you that it works right. It's just main a for loop, and then do some random math, and then I see how it. And then I create an object so that I can include this header file, blah blah blah. And I see out a bunch of stuff so I can see it works right. And then here's my little object, which does basically nothing, but it's a little string key on the scope.
What do double colons signify?
Double colons, that would be your scope resolution operator. That would tell you where to look for stuff. You probably saw that. Where'd you see that? Right here. So this is a namespace. I'm saying that the indel resides in the standard namespace. I highly recommend doing that.
If they're using namespace standard.
Yeah. If you declare at the top using namespace standard, that will do the same thing, and then you just type in indel instead. But I like to do it because I do a lot of namespace networks, so if I just get in the habit, then it comes out right for me. Otherwise, they could overload the indel tool for whatever reason to do random stuff. And if I don't namespace it, then I get bad output. So that doesn't really matter. But the nice thing is, here is what, so I did all that, and then I told Eclipse to build. I just said, hey, build this. And because it's encapsulated in a project, I don't have to do any of the hard work. The hard work is making your, I shouldn't say it's hard, it's more work to make your make files. Make files are just telling it what to compile, where it's located at, and all that good stuff. And you can see this does a lot of stuff, and it's all fancy looking, because there's this cool stuff. I did a little make file to show you how to do that outside of Eclipse, and this is all it took. G++, main.cpp, create this object called main. And it can get much more complicated, like I said. If you're doing anything non-trivial, it should get more complicated. You should be able to make these out really well. For me, I just needed something simple so I could show you how it works. But here's a nice little resource that I found that would show you how to build them out. So here's me running this. You can see here, I list my directory. I have main CPP, I have a make file that contains that previous slide, and then here's my little header file, main, or mine, sorry. And then I do make on the directory that I'm in, and that actually builds my project. So it executes this command that's in my make file, G++, main, blah, blah, blah. And then I get this little guy right here, which is my main executable. And then when I run him, I do the current directory, main, and this is what I get out, my random math, some other things that I did inside of that. But it worked right. So that was nice. It did it for me. And I did this all at the console. And a lot of people prefer console tools. I don't, mainly because I don't know them well enough to use them. There's lots more options than the -O command, than the -O for these. You can specify input libraries. You can specify other CPP files to build. There's tons of things that go like that. Oh yeah, and make is a utility that automatically builds executable programs and libraries from source code by reading files called make files, which specify how to derive the target program. So basically, you have this make file that says, hey, this is how you build this. Make works on that make file, goes through your directories and wherever else, and builds all this code, and then you get the nice little executable out of it, or library, depending on what you're doing. And then you can use them wherever. Here's a little directory structure reference, in case you want to look at it. Ooh, there's your stuff. You got your bin, your boot, blah, blah, blah. This isn't really useful unless you're searching for something. Then, hey, look back at it and say, well, I think that's in boot. Okay, here's where this resides. And now I left some time to play around. So,
in general, I'd like to say that with Microsoft Windows, one of the reasons why computing has become so popular across the board is because MS Windows has made it so easy for people to use. But along with it, they've also included a lot of self-healing stuff. And for as many times as Windows doesn't work for us, there's a lot of times there's doing stuff that you don't realize it. Sometimes nice, but that comes with a lot of overhead, which is why the operating system is over a gig in size.
yeah.
Unfortunately, when you start doing stuff on smaller machines, you want a small footprint, where you start wanting the computer to be really fast, you want to tweak it. If you start getting into robotics, things like that, where we're dealing with very small processors, small footprints, you want to be able to build your own kernel. You want control over that. You don't want all that garbage overhead, because by that point, you should be able to manage it on your own. And that's one of the real benefits of going with Linux distributions, is you can get into stuff like that, and you can only put on there what exactly you need. So there's a lot of usefulness to Linux.
And so this is Eclipse. It's my IDE. You can see over here. I can't see. You can see over here. Here's my files that I made, and they're in this directory with my project directory. And here's the file that I can edit, and then there's the other one. And it's very similar to any IDE. So one thing that's nice is through this, you can use a tool called GDB. It's graphical debugger. Or I think that's what it's called. Don't quote me on that. But as you can see, I hit the debug button up here, and then that brought me into my program. So now I can step through this and see what's going on. And I can see that these numbers are changing as I go through. Cool, my int is now 2. You can see that up there. And then I do it again, and now it's 5. Blah, blah, blah. But that's debugging. And then you can also specify breakpoints in there, like any other IDE. I want a breakpoint right here. So then I run this, and it'll keep going until it hits that breakpoint and stops. So that's Eclipse debugging. And there's also a console version of GDB that you can use if you want to. But like I said, I prefer the IDE because it's all built together. It's nice to use. So I'll show you some terminal stuff. So let's load up Vim. And Vim is the text editor that I was talking about. It has the thing that I don't like about it, but it's kind of nice. It has a built-in console. So I hit colon, and it pulls up this console at the bottom for me, and I can do tons of things. I can make new files. I can blah 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 blah. And actually, Dr. Sir, do you want to come up here and show off Emacs? I have a feeling that would be more useful.
It's like an almost religious war between Emacs and VI users. So if you guys like learn one or the other, then you can have really fun arguments and flash outs with people about stupid things like which is better, which is easier to use. Right? So, where are we? Oh, you're
Yeah, I got it.
Let's see. So here's the interesting thing. So I'm over here in my shell. I want to start Emacs. I can just start it bare like that. Or if I have some files in here, let's do better. I go back home and I say, just make a directory. Others. That's good. So basically, like the shell. Let's just go back a little bit so you know what you're seeing. This is a shell here. I'm not sure what it's using. It's bash. So this is a shell. It's really no different than this whole GUI thing that's around it, right? It just gives you a way of interacting with your OS, right? The GUI gives you some pretty stuff to look at. You know, you get graphical representations of your file system. You get graphical representations of your resource usage and all this kind of stuff, and you can run programs from there. But you can do the same thing out of the shell because essentially it's the same thing, right? So in the shell, basically what you're shown here, and if you log on to home.cs.siue.edu, where you probably have an account by now, I hope, I don't know if this is true.
Yeah.
I think they do.
Right. So that machine is running Fedora 16 or Fedora 17 or something like that. And all of this stuff is going to work either in Ubuntu or Fedora. But what you need to know is when you log onto your home machine, onto the CS server, you basically have a shell. So if you're too comfortable using the GUI, you might not have an idea of what exactly is going on. So in the shell, when you first log on, you're basically in your home directory. I do a pwd, I see what my working directory is, it's home Brian. Right now, no, where am I? I'm Brian. So that makes sense because I'm Brian for this example, right? So my home is Brian, so if I do this, I go home and I'm home. I'm basically manipulating the file system here with commands that are related to the file system. I can also manipulate other things. I can see what processes Brian is running. He's not running much. I can see what other processes are running. That's a lot of stuff, right? That's sometimes useful. If my machine slows down, I can see what other processes are running to see what exactly is slowing me down, right? So right now, the thing that's slowing me down the most probably is the thing that's running the most, which is Xorg, meaning the Windows stuff. So if I want to run faster, I should probably not use Windows. So that's one example. So let's see. Eclipse here is a nice thing to have because it does kind of take you away from the basic stuff, and the basic stuff is all there. Eclipse to build your C program or C++ program uses GCC. It's there, but it's not taking any input file. To do the debugging, you use GDB, and GDB is there. There it is. And your Eclipse is basically a wrapper around all this stuff. And if you know how to use one, you will probably have more idea of what Eclipse is doing on the other side, right? Which is not to say that you need to know it. So if you just know how to navigate Eclipse, kudos. I don't know how to do it, but Brian's probably really good at that. Anyway, so now I can do various things. I can do all sorts of stuff. Let's see if I let me see something. Check this out. Here's Eclipse. Oh, die. What? Okay, never mind. I'm not going to kill Eclipse today, but let's just say we're here and we want to do something similar like what Brian did in Eclipse, and all we have is the shell. So I know where I am. That's my directory, home Brian. If I ever get lost, right? So now I don't know where I am. If I ever get lost, I want to go home. I just do this. I'm home. That's great. I manipulate these